For 2017, one of the things I look forward to the most was doing a long bike trip. Although when I told my wife this, she reminded me that my wedding was also earlier that year. Oops. Finally, the opportunity came when we made the move from Edmonton to Victoria. I had sent everything, I just had the stuff with me at home, and it was time to go. I could finally do the long bike trip I'd been waiting for. Here's my bike, a 1985 CB750 SC Nighthawk. It's got a fairing that came with it, it's got some side baggage and a back case. It's in a little bit of rough shape, but it gets the job done, and it's a little bit under 50,000 kilometers. I was pretty excited, and I think even though it had some problems, it could make it through the trip. Here was the plan. On the first day, I would get to Jasper. It was about 300 and something kilometers, but that's fine. The second day, head down the Icefields Parkway all the way to Golden. No problem so far. Should be a beautiful trip I've always wanted to drive. Third day, make it to New Denver. I got family there, and I think I'd stay a couple days with them. Fourth day, make it to Oliver. Family there as well. Stay a couple more days. From Oliver, I was going to go straight to Powell River. It was going to be one of the longer days of the trip, but I think I could make it if I left early, and I got to Powell River a little late. After spending a bit of time with family there, my plan was to head down the island over to Port Alberni to visit my dad, and then, after staying a bit there, head down island even more, eventually to my goal of Victoria, the new place we were living, and the place where my wife had already set up camp. Now you might be wondering, why would you want to leave Edmonton? Well, for that question I asked you, why would you want to live at Edmonton? Now don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work there, and really it's a pretty cheap place to live, but it's ugly as shit. It's always gray and horrible. It's flat as fuck. I hate the flatness. And I don't know, in general, the drivers there are the worst I've ever seen, and that's coming from a guy who used to ride motorcycles in Asia. Now, I don't know what it is, but I just couldn't stand there. It's dry. I could go on for a long time. I think the most memorable photo I had of that place was a garbage can with the city's logo on it. So that reflects my feelings pretty strongly about Edmonton. All the negative stuff aside, I did meet a lot of nice people in Edmonton. People I worked with, people I had as students, even friends and stuff like that through my wife. Just enough also how much I missed the ocean. It's like a piece of you when you grow up there, and after being away from it for, I guess, 2 years in Edmonton, a year before over in Taiwan, and you just really start to miss part of your life. But back we went. We had to go. Goodbye, Edmonton. So the motorcycle had quite a lot of problems. The biggest of which was an oil leak coming from where the drive shaft leaves the crankcase. It wasn't too severe around Edmonton. I mean, it dripped a little bit here and there, mostly just when hot. When cold, it was fine. So I lost a few drips here and there, and I kept my eye on it. No problem. One of the other problems it tended to have was the front left fork was leaking a little bit of oil. Not super bad, but again, something to keep an eye on. Thirdly, the tires were totally shot. The ones that were on there before were on there for 10 and 9 years respectively, so I changed those first thing. Now, that was everything I knew about. Unfortunately, as I was getting ready to go the day or so before, there was a couple other problems that popped up. First of which being that my clutch fluid was somehow depleting itself a little faster than normal. Again, not a huge deal. Just meant every couple of days I had to top it up. I couldn't figure out where it was leaking from. I still haven't figured out where it's coming from, but I have kind of narrowed it down. It might be down at the clutch. So at the beginning of May, I had a bit of a problem with the bike starting. Okay, one day I went out there, wasn't starting, and then the battery's dead. I was like, well, what the fuck happened here? So I recharged the battery, and I gave it another shot, and it started up all right. And then I was a little confused for a while. And then it ended up in the point where it wasn't starting here and there. I had to bump start it a couple times. I said by a couple times mean fairly often. Eventually what I did is I narrowed it down with a voltmeter that it was the starter. So my starter was giving me problems. I took it inside, I opened it up, and bam! There it is, black as fucking night inside. It looked like a piece of charcoal had just exploded in there. So I ordered some new brushes and brush heads from Rick's Motorcycle Electrics. I really think they did a sweet job. Awesome guys. They even gave me a call and asked them some questions, and they gave me all the answers I needed. And I replaced the brushes in it when they eventually got there. It took like 2 weeks or more for them to get there, and then replace the brushes. It seemed all right for a little bit, and then a day or two later, bam, I've got similar problems. So this time, I'm going right in. I took it all apart again. I took a look at the brushes. First of all, they're chipping like shit. Okay, they're chipping like crazy. So I'm thinking, okay, that means my commutator is not smooth enough. I do my best to try to smooth it out, clean it up, and still no luck. So here I am with a dead starter. After looking online for a while, trying to find a used one. First of all, this is a rare fucking bike in Canada. Okay, there's not many of them. In the States, there's the 700s, but it's the same parts, but then you gotta ship it from the States and it still sucks. Eventually, because I wanted and guaranteed that the starter was going to work, I ended up purchasing a aftermarket one, again from Rick's Motorcycle Electrics, and they sold a starter that fits my bike that is brand fucking new. A little bit of a different design, but it doesn't quite match, but I mean, fuck, it's a guaranteed working starter, and it was great. And I would like to shout at them first off. They did a sweet job. Thanks, guys. It worked. It got me home, and that's really what I was most worried about, because I didn't want to have to bump start the bike in some weird ass position in the middle of the Rockies. So I really appreciate it. With the new starter on, all the problems that were still with the bike, at least I knew about, and the problems that I could fix at the moment, they were fixed. So I got ready to go, started packing up my shit. My camera equipment, a sleeping bag, a foamy, a tent, a laptop, riding gear, a backpack full of clothes, a few tools, a jar of peanut butter, and my mitts. I originally wanted to bring some sriracha as well, but I ran out of room. So I took one quick look around the rest of the place, the backyard area, and packed everything on the bike. It's time to go. So with that, I took off out of Edmonton, and I'd say things were going pretty well for the first little while. And then I got about 160 kilometers out, and I hit my first speed bump. And by speed bump, I mean I ran out of gas pretty much. I had to switch reserve, which I really wasn't expecting. I've done tests before, and I usually get about 280 kilometers highway on a full tank. Unfortunately, it didn't make it there. So when I switched to reserve, I panicked a little bit. Luckily, there's a little place up the road from where I had to do that called Itton Junction, and I was very fortunate with that, so I made it there, but that freaked me out, and it freaked me out for the rest of the trip. So for the rest of the time, I played it really safe with my gas distances. Now, by the time I made it to Edmonton, a few of the things on the bike were kind of falling off, so I had to pull over. When I pulled over, I noticed this. Oil had been leaking out like crazy, and I guess I felt it on the highway. It felt like it really just bogged down for a second. I don't know, just a whole bunch spewed out, more than usual. Usually it's a drip, right? And it just exploded out. I don't know if it's the speed I was going. This bike isn't really used to doing highways, so it was a bit of a surprise. The big problem was that it was all over the back tire and spraying up on the back of the bike and shit, which wasn't great. Now, finally, as I'm fixing this problem, by fixing I mean adding more oil to try to get me to the next town. I ended up having to put the bike on the center stand to do it. And then as I took it off the center stand, the bike tipped over. It was just too fucking heavy. I couldn't handle it. And on a curved, very angled road, I never should have stopped there in the first place, but I was in a bit of a panic. Luckily, some guy helped me stand it back up, because with all the shit on it and in the cases, I would have had to empty it all out to get it back up. It's a fucking heavy bike to begin with. So thanks to that guy. And I gotta say, this is probably the lowest point in the trip right off the bat, but it's good to get that things out of the way. At the very least, there was no damage, because the fairing and saddlebags, basically things that the bike rested on when I fell over, and I let down really gently. When, with no further ado, I had to carry on towards Hinton. Now the roads out here, they're straight, they're flat, they're pretty boring. Honestly, this is one of the reasons I wanted to get the fuck out of Alberta. It's no fun for motorcycle riding unless you're into cruising down the highway for a long period of time with no scenery. Now Hinton is a pretty small town. It kind of reminds me of my hometown, Powell River, in the sense that it's very much lumber oriented. It's the industry that goes there, and a bit of tourism as well. People passing through on the way to Jasper. Now, there's not much to do there, but I got a chance to stop for lunch, got a cool picture, and headed on towards the national park. It's really around this time, a little bit before Hinton and immediately after, that the views start to get good. You can see the mountains. It starts to get a little curvier. There are actually trees around instead of just fields. And when you enter the park, it's pretty sweet. I mean, you're not quite at the gates yet, but you can already see wildlife. You can already see lakes, rivers, and all the things that you kind of go to this place for. It's beautiful. And it's really uplifting when you're coming in from Edmonton. Now, as you enter the park, this year the park passes were free, but normally you need to buy a park pass for your vehicle and people in it, and it's not bad. It's pretty cheap, but it's beautiful. I suggest you take the time and stop here and there. Look at what you want to stop at beforehand. Jasper has lots of nice attractions. In the past, we've done Mount Edith Cavell, we've done Pyramid Lake, I've done the Moline Canyon hike, especially good in winter. But this time, I just kind of wanted to get to my campground and settle down. You know what I mean? I had all my shit with me. I didn't really want to stop and view things on the way in. So as I'm passing everything by, my first stop is Wabasso Campground, just south of Jasper. It's on 97C, I believe, is the highway. And it's a little bit smaller highway, but it's much nicer to drive than the big one. And the campground was pretty plain. They're really nice at the service desk at the front there. It's really out of the way, so it's far away from everything. You don't really get much in the way of amenities. Like my campsite had nothing, no water, no electricity, and that's fine. That's what I paid for, right? But the whole campsite is actually very barren, I would say, in general. Not a lot of privacy between sites, although it is a beautiful kind of place. Not to mention, it was the first time I've had a chance to use this tent, which was really awesome because I didn't know how I was going to stand up. I had set it up kind of a little bit in my apartment just to see how it works, and I'm glad it actually held up in the real world. One thing about this campground I will mention is that it has absolutely beautiful washrooms. If you're going to use a washroom anywhere, Wabasso Campground was the place to do it. For dinner, because I didn't pack myself dinner or a camping stove, I try to keep everything light, just eat where I go, right? So I had to drive back to Jasper. It's a beautiful little town. There's only one or two streets that are really worth going down if you're a tourist and looking for shopping or food, and it's kind of pricey. So what I ended up doing was just stopping at Smitty's and whatever. It was a cheap eat. There's really not much cheaper unless you want to go to the fast food stores. There's like a KFC-A&W, if I remember correctly, or Pizza Hut or something like that. And, you know, if that's what you want to do, I've done that before. Just got a large pizza and split it with a couple people. It's good for me. One thing I was not expecting was that camping alone can be pretty boring. I've actually never camped alone. I always have company, and I usually bring shit to do, but I had nothing to do this time, and as a result, yeah, I ended up playing Age of Empires for a little bit, and then went to bed early. So exciting night. I was up pretty early the next morning. I just wanted to get on my way heading out towards Golden. It is a long ride, and it's a road I've never gone on before, neither by bike nor car. So I kind of wanted to get out of there quickly, had myself my bagel with some peanut butter on it, and took off. The drive was beautiful, and there's a ton of bikers on the way, so you've always got people to wave at. I found a lot of people waving, right? Everywhere in Edmonton, people wave at you as you're a biker. Not other cars, but, you know, other bikers. You get the little bike wave, right? And plenty of places to stop at. I tried not to stop too many because I was still a little afraid of my bike not starting. It was only kind of recently that I put that starter in, and I was a little bit paranoid that I was going to pull over somewhere and not be able to go anywhere. And then you're going to be in the middle of nowhere, right? So, yeah, I was playing it easy. The one place I did stop was the Athabasca Falls. Now, I wasn't expecting such an awesome waterfall, but it is pretty sweet. There's lots of room to walk around, but one thing I do recommend, as with any tourist thing in Jasper, is get there early. If you don't get there early, anywhere, it doesn't matter, Jasper, Banff, Lake Louise, Golden, if you don't get there early, you're not getting a parking spot. So I was there like 8, and it was really nice and pretty empty still. And as I left, I was there half an hour. As I left, it got busy. It was like parking was totally full. You don't stand a chance of getting in there. So here this morning, if you're a tourist, go to the thing you want to see the most first and early, like as the sun's coming up, and you'll get the best experience. The other big fear here was that the nearest gas station from Jasper down to Golden is Saskatchewan Crossing. Now, if I remember correctly, that's like 160 kilometers, 170 kilometers, something like that from Jasper. And I was a little bit nervous. I didn't really want to push my luck, but I had no choice. I wasn't going to go buy a jerry can. I didn't have any room to put a jerry can on the bike. So if I ran out of gas, I was just going to have to bite it and get someone to help me out. Luckily, that didn't happen, and I made it there all right. Was kind of hoping to stop at Lake Louise on the way down. I had never been to Lake Louise. I just kind of go by it on the highway once in a while, but I never stopped and actually seen the lake. So I figured, yeah, man, I'll go in there and I will try to see if I can sneak a peek. Well, I pulled into town of Lake Louise. Goddamn, they had people like directing traffic at the intersections because it was that bad. It was so busy. So instead, I decided, screw it. I'm just gonna pull off, get a lunch at the gas station, fuel up, and continue on my way to Golden. I did happen to stop at Emerald Waterfalls, I believe it's called, or Emerald Lake, and the little waterfall that's near it, and it was not bad. I didn't actually get off the bike at the lake because it was just so packed that late in the day, but the waterfall, there was parking, so I ended up scooting off, taking a look at it. It didn't really compare to Athabasca Falls, but it was a nice stop nonetheless. One thing that really surprised me was how much I liked Golden. Like, it was a pretty nice little town. When I pulled in there, I got a little lost, admittedly, but when I found the campground, I just stayed at the municipal campground, it was actually really nice, much more sheltered, much more private, and the only downside was that the ground was really hard. I couldn't really drive a stake in it very well for the tent, but it did the job, and you know what I mean, there was water around and all sorts of shit. It was kind of nicer than the Jasper one, but it makes sense given that this one's right in town and actually municipal taken care of. Now, the town itself of Golden, there's lots to do. I took a walk around, lots of restaurants and stuff like that. And the place I ended up stopping was the Wolf's Den. Because whilst I was walking through town, this big storm rolled in. And it was just getting rainy, it was pouring, and I was like, screw this, I gotta go sit inside somewhere. So I took an early dinner, stopped at the Wolf's Den, and had a decent burger. I got the chicken burger, and The only complaint I'd say is that it was a little burnt. Again, campground and Golden are just a beautiful place. The one thing that I need to check while I was here was my oil leakage. Now, remember on the way to Jasper, it fucking exploded on me. And I've been checking it now and then, and it seemed pretty good so far. And at this point, I was fairly confident it was back to its usual drip, drip, drip. So I don't know what caused it, if it's just the high speeds from Edmonton to Jasper. But luckily, it seems to have stopped for the moment. The note here is that it has gotten extremely hot compared to most of my Alberta temperatures. And when I was in Edmonton, you top out like 32. Well, now I'm in Golden and it's like pushing 40 a lot of the time. It was a little bit hard. Now, what I really didn't expect was that with the heat of Golden the day before, the morning was absolutely frigid. Even in the Rockies, I didn't think it was that cold. I guess I'm still in the Rockies, but even in like Jasper, it wasn't that cold. And now in the morning, I woke up and I was just freezing my ass off. That's all right though. I'm heading out early. Basically, as the sun rises, I get up, I eat a little bit, my bagel stash and peanut butter, and I'm on my way again. Now, the weather was a little iffy, but I had a plan. I was going to try to hang in there. I got to get to Revelstoke first, okay? Revelstoke was the goal. And at Revelstoke, there's a place called Meadow in the Sky. I really wanted to go up there. Look at it in Google Maps. Like, look at that. That looks like an extremely awesome bike track, right? Lots of curves, hairpin turns, stuff like that. Switchbacks up the mountain. That's a biker's dream. And I got there, and I was a little bit concerned because it looked like it was going to storm again. I decided, screw it. I might never be back here again with the bike. I need to do it once. So when you get to the top, you're heading up, and you have to stop. Why? Because it's chained off. There's actually a parks guy who stops you. He said, you can walk the rest of the way up, but there isn't much, he said. And I said, well, I came this far, I may as well. So in my big heavy boots and pants and all this shit, I walked up there. And when you get to the top, this is what you get. Snow. The road just ends, man. It just snow. And a little snowman. And then you turn around and you walk back down. So it was a little bit regretful. And then coming down the hill, it started to hail. And then when I got low enough, the hail turned to rain. And I was just getting fucking soaked. So it was time for me to call it. I needed to take a bit of a break and stop for lunch. So I stopped at Denny's. Who can't love Denny's? Actually, I don't really like Denny's that much, but it was the only restaurant I could really see in the vicinity that I thought might be kind of cheap. And I needed to get out of the rain. Now I'm heading out of Revelstoke. I got to get to New Denver. And to get to New Denver, you take this little highway right after leaving Revelstoke to the west. You cross a bridge, you take a left, and you're heading down towards Shelter Bay Ferry. Now Shelter Bay Ferry will take you across the lake, and you continue down Highway 23. And it's a beautiful area. I'm used to bigger ferries. The small ferry was adorable, and it was nice, and I really fucking enjoyed it. But the highway itself was just really, I don't know, quaint, quiet, curvy, all the cuss sounds that I like to hear as a motorcyclist. And I keep thinking, like, the cusp, that area, I could totally live there, man. It was so nice. Maybe not great if you need amenities and shit, but it was so pristine.
Strange man running alone, carries his pain and carries his trombone. The slow Stephen dogs making him sleep and he in the night. Freedom's a tricky gift, it could be joy or it could be grief.
When I finally got to New Denver, I was greeted with a good surprise. My dad had ridden up from Port Alberni, where he's staying, and all the way up to New Denver to meet me there and ride part of the way back with me. Actually, the rest of the way back, almost all the way back to Victoria. I was pretty lucky here because my aunt owns Nuru Coffee in New Denver, so she was very fortunate. She put us up there for 2 nights, and we spent the time with her. She still did run her business, but she closed early a little bit one day, and she took us on a ride out to I believe it was called Barlow, and I'd never been out that way before. It was really cool. Really windy roads. The only thing that almost totally fucked us up is that she's a bit of a crazy. She likes to go fast. She knows the road. She's got her little Ducati, and I think we just weren't expecting it, right? So we get to this top of the hill, and there's this gravel, and I thought for sure that my dad was about to run her off the road, but fortunately nothing like that happened. It always gets you a little worried. I thought for sure I was going to witness an accident, and the best part of all is I got it all on camera.
Sitting by the fire, we just met time to try to spend most days tonight. Among the thousands of such cornerstones, she told the waters won't need to scroll. When she talks to me, I pray, for she never stay away. When she laughs, oh, what I hear is the echo of the years. Smelling the wood that burning from afar, I search for something in you, but nothing can turn straight to my mind. That night is softer than Caroline. When she talks to me, I pray, but she never stay away. When she laughs, oh, what I hear is the echo of the years.
While we were there, though, I can't thank her enough. We ate like kings, and I don't know, again, New Denver, another one of these towns. It's like small, and there's not much there, but it's so quaint. I could totally see living there. I could be happy living there. Mind you, in the winter, it gets a lot colder than I probably want, so we'd reconsider that if I ever was there for winter. It was a bit of a slow start coming out of New Denver, but as we made our way through the Kootenays and into the Okanagan, things started to really heat up. We went along Highway 3, so down to Castlegar, through Grand Forks and all that stuff, and the heat really got to both me and my bike. What I ended up doing here with my dad, we ended up putting a patch on there, just a little spill kit rag wrapped around the seal area on the bike in the hopes that it would totally help it out. I don't know what it's going to do for very long, but it worked fairly well to keep some of the oil off my rear tire. My dad was pretty concerned that I was going to catch that oil and just wipe out, especially because there's a lot of corners in Highway 3, and some of them are a little sharper, and I don't tend to slow down too much for those, so, I can understand his worry. But we zip tied that on there. Luckily, we both brought a handful of zip ties, and it seemed pretty good. For a while there, it was working, and eventually it got saturated, but it was definitely worth it. It was way too hot, like I said. We're coming through a Soyuz. The one area that's beautiful, and if you're a motorcyclist, you have to check out, is the road coming out of a Soyuz to the east. Those switchbacks there are beautiful, and there's one corner right at the top. I think that's the only corner in the whole trip where I came in a little too fast, and I was thinking to myself, oh God, I fucked up. Because it was just so sharp, and I think normally when they have the 30 sign, usually I can go 50. But on this one, it was like, no way. I took it way too fast, and I'm just glad I have nothing dangerous on camera to show you about that. Luckily, no crashes. Eventually, we made it to Oliver, and my grandparents live there, so we stayed 2 nights with them. It was pretty sweet in the end. Most importantly, it was 2 nights to relax. Now, I haven't actually seen my grandparents in quite a while either. We saw them for the wedding, but other than that, it's been 2 years basically since I've been back to Oliver. And a beautiful little area. It's a little hot, a little too hot for me to handle, I think. I'm not really accustomed to that anymore. But it is, I don't know, it has a good landscape to it. I like the cliffs, I like the rolling hills, and it's a beautiful kind of place. My time there, we just, we dealt with the bike. We tried to get the oil off the back tire because it was, washed it off a bit. I don't really want that stuff eating at the back tire. We tried to improve our temporary patch and make it a little bit better. And I don't know, it works pretty well. I mean, it rides fine with it on. It's not getting caught in anything, thank goodness. And it didn't light on fire, which was my other concern because it's pretty darn close to the exhaust. It's also at this point where I kind of changed the plan a little bit. So instead of going from Oliver, continuing along Highway 3 through Princeton and all that towards Hope, we ended up going to Kelowna instead. I got an old friend there from university, and we decided that, hey, I'll meet her for lunch, and then instead we'll come down the Coquihalla. It's a little bit longer. It's a little bit harder and faster on the bike, but I gotta go and see her. You know what I mean? I haven't seen her in years, and it's what good friends do. This part of the ride ended up being the most brutal by far. So the drive up to Kelowna wasn't too bad. It was hot, but it was still early in the day, and a lot of traffic. That's the only thing I hate. When you go in through the West Bank and then across to Kelowna, it's just stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. So we eventually stopped at this little place downtown Kelowna. It was packed. It was absolutely packed, busy as shit. And got our lunch. It was pretty good, and we headed back towards the connector so we could cross over to Merritt. Now this is where things started to get brutal. It was starting to get in the afternoon now. I was toasting. The bike was just having a shit fit because as it got hotter and hotter, the bike leaked more and more oil. It was a bit of a problem. I'm sure the high speeds of the Coquihalla also had something to do with it. I believe the speed limit there was 120, and we were probably only doing 100, but that's fine with me. I just wanted to take it easy on the bike. Even I was feeling a little faint. The heat really got to me. I ended up having to fucking cool off and wash my face and get an ice cream and all these things to try to keep alive here because I was just dying out there. And fortunately, I didn't pass out while riding or anything like that. Those pants I bought, really fucking hot. I was not expecting it, but at highway speeds, I don't know, man. It just feels safer to have them on, even though they are really toasty. Now, eventually we got to Hope, and turning off the major highway at Hope, we went right up north, to as if you're going towards the 7 or the Fraser Valley Canyon route. And we found a little campground there. It was a little sketchy, but it was cheap. I think we paid like $20 for 2 tents. There were a lot of weird people around, but whatever. We have a lot of knives and stuff for 2 people, so I think we were going to be all right. We just did Dairy Queen for dinner. Saw some other bikers kicking around there. I think they come out of Vancouver and stuff to race around a bit on the more open roads. And in the end, we ended up starting a little fire and stuff like that. It ended up being quite nice. A lot of mosquitoes. Right by the river though, so you kind of expect it. It was a beautiful view. The next day we were still up pretty early, and our original plan was to go all the way to Powell River, but it's still like an 8-hour day or 6-hour day or something like that. So I think we were both kind of tired, and we decided just to take it easy, stop somewhere along the way. Now, we ended up making all the way to the ferry. I like the Horseshoe Bay Ferry. You know what I mean? It's a ferry I took a lot of time as a kid, and as a biker, you get to go right to the front. And that's something I'm not used to doing. It's pretty sweet. When you get to the other side, from Gibson's all the way to Earl's Cove. Now that stretch is some of the most beautiful biking road that you ever get to do, especially the end towards Earl's Cove. Windy, and it's just low traffic most of the time, unless you get caught in the ferry traffic. I love it. In the middle there's a town called Seashelt, and that's where we decided to stop for the night. There's a campground if you continue through Seashelt and you head kind of northeast into there called Porpoise Bay. I didn't see any porpoises, but it was pretty good price and looked like a nice campground. The only downside was that there weren't really any facilities there either. Some washrooms kind of far away, some outhouses, but overall it's really nicely kept, and I'd recommend it if you ever end up stopping in Seashelt. My revelations about this day: the bike seems a little bit happier with a little bit less oil. when I fill it right up, the oil tends to leak out pretty hard. I'm guessing because it's under pressure more. If I let it be a little bit down, not a lot, I'm not past the add oil mark on the dipstick or anything, but it seems to leak a little bit less. Maybe there's just a little bit less pressure. I mean, I can hear it a little bit more. The engine sounds a little bit oil starved when I do that. So hopefully I'm not damaging anything, but at least it's keeping some of the oil off the back tire. The slower speeds here really help as well. I think the highest speed limit on the Peninsula is like 80, and not for long. Most of the time it's 60 or 50 or, in the lower end, and that really helps a lot. That night we went out to a pub for some grub. It was pretty divey, but that's all right. You know what I mean? It kind of fit in with that crowd when you're on the bike. People ask questions. They'd like to see you there, so I don't mind. And then thanks to my dad, we had a great fire. There's one thing he's awesome at doing while camping is making fires. He just goes around, looks at, here's twigs, here's some bark, okay, here's a match and some moss, and he just creates this big-ass fire out of nothing. And I'm pretty darn envious. That's an incredible talent. The next day, we were only going to Powell River, so we could actually start pretty late. It's not a long ride, and there's only one ferry in the middle. And we've already paid for it because you only pay on the outer edges, either the Salt Shoe Bay side or the Horseshoe Bay side, and then getting off the peninsula is free. So we were basically set to go anytime we wanted. One thing I noticed in this whole trip is that my dad drives pretty slow. And I guess it's fine. His bike doesn't corner as well as like a sports bike or anything like that. He's driving a 2000, I think it's a 2000 Honda Shadow, and it's a nice bike, but you know what I mean? He's taking his time with it, and that's fine with me. I'd rather get there safe than get there fast. But there's some of those corners I wanted to take pretty fast, and when you got somebody in front of you who's not going that fast, it can be a little bit frustrating. That's really part of the reason why when I got off the ferry, I was in front, and I just ripped out of there. I know this land. This area, Powell River, is my fucking town. I know all the roads. I know all the curves. I used to drive around here all the time. So it was nice to actually be somewhere familiar where I knew the corners that were coming up and how severe they were. And I could really just rip into them. Absolutely gun it. I think I made it from Salt Shoe Bay Ferry to Powell River in like record time, like 15 minutes. That was pretty fucking sweet. I was, maybe not 15 minutes, but it was fast, man. It was good. It felt nice. So like I was saying, Powell River is where I'm born and raised. My mom still lives there. I still got family there. So it was nice to have a few days of rest there. And here's a cat. The very first day we were there, just kind of hung out, visited some family here and there. I went through some old stuff around the house and, mementos and things like that. Played some bocce. I was a little worried about the bike. It leaked a little bit, it seemed, that day, more than I wanted to. And I was a little concerned. The next day we ended up riding out to Lund, which if you ever visit Powell River, I definitely recommend going out to Lund. It's a pretty chill place. There's not a ton there, but there's a couple good restaurants. Nancy's Bakery you gotta check out. And one guy I gotta recommend for sure is my buddy Mac. Him and his wife Jasmine, they make a sweet ice cream. They got their own little ice cream stand down there in the summer and the spring, I think. And it's all homemade ice cream. There's even some vegan ice cream there, which is like, I didn't understand how that was possible, but after looking into it, hey, it was fine. Apparently it tastes pretty darn good. I think I ended up going with the raspberry vinaigrette, and I do not regret it at all. I took my mom on the bike there, and my dad took the sister, and it was pretty good. Nice windy road out to Lund. In a lot of places it gets a little skinnier, and the side of the roads are a little not that kept, so you kind of gotta watch out for gravel and potholes and stuff like that. But overall, it's not a bad ride. I just take it slow and, don't go too hard, because a lot of those corners, you don't know who's turning out from a logging road, from a driveway, or anything like that. There was a few close calls. I think somebody got hit with a bee, and in the end, luckily, everybody made it home safely.
Someday we're tying up in a shed so we can central bay under the sun rays. Hey, will you ever try to settle down? it's maybe cool. You hearts made of living painted ground. It's a fucking will you ever try to settle down? It's maybe cool. You hearts made of living painted ground. It's a fucking road.
Marceline held up really well today, so that was good. Very little oil leakage, and it put me in a pretty confident mood for the next couple days. Well, it was time to leave, and the only way to get off Powell River is either by ferry or by airplane. So we took the ferry over to Comox, and it's the longer ferry, I think the longest ferry of this trip. It's about an hour and 20 minutes or so to cross. They got a brand new one since I was there last, and it's a lot smaller. There's not as much in terms of facilities and stuff like that. Like, I missed the old game room. I don't think this one had a video game room. Those were always sweet back in the day. Arcade games, used to play Gauntlet, Raiden, Tekken, all those cool games. But, you know what I mean? It's pretty modern. It's got some cool flip-up ramp things in the front. You know, it's nice to see at least they're putting a little bit of effort into these, because I would hate to be on one of those if they sunk. The old one was pretty fucking rusty. I wish I had some video of it, but my dad fucking locked his rear tire up at one point because there was a guy in front of him turning left and just stopped in the middle of the road. I don't know if it was just my dad didn't notice it or whatever, but that freaked me out. I haven't seen anybody lock up their rear tire that hard on a ride like this before. Luckily, he's not bad, so he keeps the bike upright, and everybody moved on, but we had a bit of a nervous chuckle about it later. I was definitely losing a bit of oil at this point. We took the old Island Highway just because it's a bit nicer, and it's a bit slower as well, so that definitely helped the bike problem. One of the places I'd recommend stopping in if you ever go up or down the island is Qualicum Beach. Now, Qualicum Beach, it's pretty much a retirement community, but it's got a really nice ocean front, and at certain times of year, it has one of the longest tides. So there's a Sandcastle Festival. You can go there, and you can go, and it's like forever. The beach goes out for meters and meters and meters, just like as far as you can see. It's amazing. But the rest of the year, it's still worth stopping there because this ice cream shack. Now look at all these goddamn flavors. I remember as a kid, this was like a highlight of my youth. You always had to stop here because I don't know, man. Ice cream in so many flavors. How can you say no to that? This is also the place where I had to part ways with my dad. He went back home to Port Alberni, and I continued south towards Victoria. Now, most of this ride is pretty uninteresting until you get to the Malahat. The Malahat's a really fun kind of ride. It'd be better, I think, if there was less traffic. It seems like they're doing construction right now, so it's really slow and kind of backed up. But it wasn't too bad. I mean, still had quite a few turns. There's a lot of uphill when you're first going up the side, and as you come down, you're basically just going down, 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 down. You could coast the whole thing if you really wanted to, but you'd probably crash and die, because I can't imagine if you coasted the whole thing with no engine brake, you would be going like 150, 160. It's pretty steep at points, especially if you're on the bike. You know, you can get going pretty darn fast in neutral. But it was a good ride. I did notice that I was leaking quite a bit of oil in this last stretch. I just kept topping it up, and since then I've looked into it a little bit more and ordered the parts to fix the damn thing. So it's a bit of a job, but hopefully I'm going to get to that pretty quick here. It's not the easiest thing, but I don't want to pay somebody to do it. So hopefully it goes all right and the bike is in better working condition in the future. Now this trip worked out pretty well. I left on June 17th. I left Edmonton. And I arrived in Victoria on July 1st, which for those of you who don't know is Canada Day. It's our national holiday and there's tons of shit going on. That probably didn't help the traffic, but one of the really nice things is when you get into Victoria, and it's a beautiful city to begin with, I just miss it a lot in a lot of ways. It's very small towny, even though it probably has a pretty substantial population, maybe 600,000 or so like that, but it has the feeling of a smaller town. It can be frustrating at times because the speed limits here are super low, but it means that when there is an event like this, they can do a lot of stuff that's pretty darn cool. I didn't really want to go downtown for all the crowd hustle and bustle, but at the end of the night, we were treated to a very nice Canada Day fireworks show. It is Canada's 150th anniversary, so these were kind of a special fireworks event, and you know what I mean? It's a nice homecoming. What more could I ask for except the little show to welcome me back? In the end, I'm just happy that the bike made it in one piece. That was my biggest worry. And I'm still here. I survived. The bike survived. It's running pretty nicely now. Like I said, I'm going to do some work on it here to get it in tip-top condition because I want to keep this bike for a long time to come. I know it's old. It's old enough to be a collector's item. Like literally, I could get collector's plates for it if I wanted to. But I'm going to put a lot of work into it. I'm going to make it a fucking nice bike. If I can keep it for as long as possible, I think that will be ideal. Now, as for what the trip cost me, overall, it cost about $560. And that's gas, food, campgrounds. Now, what I didn't pay for was I didn't pay for a lot of food while I stayed with family. And I stayed with family most of the time. So it could be definitely more expensive. What I also didn't pay for was lodgings, because again, staying with family, they didn't charge me anything. So there's definitely a big benefit to that. I think I did it pretty cheap. Probably could have been cheaper, I guess. But I don't know if I ate in a couple places that were a little more expensive. I could have just eaten the cheapest thing possible. Like go to the store and get sandwiches and stuff. But no, I think we did all right. If you guys have any questions or comments, I think feel free to ask them below and I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, thanks for watching everybody, ride safe, and I'll see you again soon. Well everybody, that's it. 4 months after I finished filming, I'm finally done editing, and I have a little bit of an update. Marceline is doing fine. We replaced the rear shaft seal, and we replaced the fork seal, so she is now completely non-leaking. In other news, her fairing I replaced with another one I had, and I put a new headlight in so I can drive at night. All in all, she's healthy, she's running well, and hopefully I'll get to go on a big trip soon.